Alright guys, today we are gonna be reacting to how Germany grapples with its dark past. Let's put it that way. Thank you so much for the support, guys. And again, before you start the video, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Let's just get to that 10,000 subscribers and help me out. Let's jump in.
The bells of St. Jacob's Church in a town called Herxheim am Berg, sounding the midday call. Nestled in hills dressed in the rich vineyards of Germany's southern wine region, the church dates back 10 centuries. In medieval times, people believed bells could vanquish demons. But some demons are bigger than others.
Damn.
And there is a secret in the clock tower. An 83-year-old bell bearing a swastika.
Oh, wow.
Hitler. The town's mayor, Ronald Becker, has just resigned over the controversy created by the bell's recent rediscovery. But he still agreed to take us up for a look.
So it says the
Alles fürs Vaterland, Adolf Hitler. Und da ist es
and the
halt Gott.
swastika.
Ja.
Yeah.
Everything for the fatherland, it says, dated 1934, the year Hitler came to full power.
That's
Nazi
crazy.
symbols have been banned in Germany since 1949, with some exceptions for historical artifacts. But Becker says he sees no reason to remove it.
Die Glocke sollte eigentlich hängen bleiben und sollte weiter ihren Dienst tun.
The bell really should remain hanging there, he says, and should carry on doing its duty, because we have here an historic bell. Becker says that town councillors have known about it since at least 1951. There was publicity again in 2011, he says, with no outcry.
That's a real bell.
Village next to Herxheim am Berg
That is a real bell. That's not, one of these bells that you put a microphone in it and then just make a bell sound. No, this is a real bell.
home to a retired teacher and part-time organist
Oh, those are nice
named
oranges.
Sigrid Peters. She's the one who discovered that the bell exists and still rings. She calls it a disgrace.
Dass es die Glocke so gibt und dass die
It
verwendet.
bothered me, she says, that other people just like me would hear the sound of beautiful church bells and have no clue that there's a swastika on it. Peters wants the bell
Oh,
silenced.
okay.
not destroyed.
It's 1,000 years old, man. I mean, I guess there's ways where you can sort of like mitigate that symbol, right? Well, don't. What are you gonna do? Put a new one? I don't think so. Like, probably, do something with the symbol and scrape it if you can. But I don't
She
know.
believes remnants of the Nazi era must be kept as a warning to future generations, but only when presented in proper context. Peters has received anonymous threats since she wrote to
Wow.
the local newspaper about the bell.
Wow.
People angry with her for stirring up the past.
I mean, damn, man.
Berlin. If ever there were a capital of memory, this is it. The city's Holocaust memorial, dedicated to the some 6 million European Jews murdered by the Nazis, sits right in the
Damn.
heart of the German capital.
So sad, huh?
A vast sea of stone slabs, anonymous, dehumanizing. Commuters taking trains to or from work at Wittenbergplatz are reminded that it was the same station from which so many Jews and others deemed undesirable by the Nazis were deported.
They have not been denying. No, they have not been forgetting.
Analyst Joseph Yanning says constant self-examination has allowed Germany to evolve to its current state, the most powerful country in Europe, with a chancellor, Angela Merkel, seen as a moral leader on the world stage, and for many here as an antidote to the US President Donald Trump, who seemed to have a hard time condemning a neo-Nazi march in Charlottesville.
You will see that there is no way to escape the fact that this has been the center of the Nazi terror machine. It was done from this city. And this city will tell you in a number of ways it was here where it happened.
The recent debate over Confederate statues in the United States has drawn the gaze of many here to the German example. Few countries have confronted a dark past as profoundly or as doggedly, but that doesn't mean there haven't been differences of opinion over how best to do that.
Hitler,
Damn.
How Could It Happen? Is an exhibition examining the rise of the Third Reich and set in an old concrete air raid shelter. Managing director Enno Lenze says any historical exploration of Hitler is sensitive in Germany, in part because of fears that historical sites or objects could become neo-Nazi shrines.
You know, how can I just approach this without offending people, right? I'm always going to offend people. I don't know why. But hear me out before you dislike the video. We have to recognize that beside people, the guy with the mustache, we can all agree the guy with the mustache was a disgrace to humanity. We agree on that. However, what Germany was going through is something that we should not do again. Does that make sense? We shouldn't put nations or countries through the same pain that Germany was going through, right? Back then. Why? To avoid a mustache guy or the guy with the mustache. Does that make sense? That's how I see this. I don't like the guy with the mustache. Personally, I think he was a coward. Complete coward. Worse than the little Chihuahua, I would say. But whatever contributed to that guy with the mustache getting to power, we should avoid it. We should avoid that sentiment.
Even though he runs a museum, Lenze says he can see no argument in favor of keeping the Herrsheim bell at St. Jacob's Church.
That's crazy, look at that.
If you're a neo-Nazi, they say, no, it's not that I'm a neo-Nazi, but. And then some weird explanation will follow about tradition and I don't know whatever. But I think no Democrat and no anti-fascist will keep a bell saying Hail Hitler.
Oh, that's funny. So they're okay with it. That's the problem. That's crazy.
There are other ways Germans work to keep the lessons of history alive. The mantra of never again, of necessity a continuum, passed down from generation to generation. Every year, students from teacher Rainer Seefield's history class make a pilgrimage to this cemetery on the outskirts of Berlin.
That's very nice.
Here they clean the gravestones of more than 1,000 forced laborers from outside of Germany who died under the Nazi regime.
Wow.
For one so young, they are caring but heavy acts of atonement, especially for a history not of their own making.
Nice and clean.
Wilhelmina Ellinger is 14.
I think I can't change anything about it, and I'm not proud of it. But I think how Germany just grew after it and rebuilt itself, I think that's pretty good, because it's like one of the most powerful countries in the world right now. And I think that's like a good sign that we learned.
Good point. Good point.
So much so that many Germans finally feel far more comfortable waving the flag, although not in a nationalistic way, they'll hasten to add.
A guy
We
with
didn't
the
used to think about
with
this
the
country
cigarette.
as being great. No? Not in the sense of being über alles, as the first verse of the traditional German national anthem goes, Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, but in the sense of being a good place to live.
Nor does it mean that Germans feel free to finally untether themselves from the past, especially in Germany's current political climate. Another ritual of remembrance on a Berlin street. Small crowds gathered outside of an apartment block watch as some of the paving
What
stones
the
in front of
hell
it
is that?
gathered outside of an apartment block.
What the hell is?
Watch
That's the
as
dude with his wife, right? I guess.
some of the paving stones in front of it are dug up.
Uh oh.
They're replaced with little brass blocks
Oh.
known as Stolperstein, stumbling blocks, memorials placed in front of the homes people either fled or were deported from during the Nazi years.
Damn.
This couple and their 5-year-old daughter made it to France before being sent to Auschwitz, where they were killed.
That is sad.
There are now more than 30,000 of these little stones across the country, the brainchild of German artist Gunter Demnig. He arrives in a kind of Indiana Jones type flurry to tap the stones
Yeah, shout out to
into
this
place
dude, man.
before disappearing again without a word, sometimes even before the ceremony. Asked about Herxheim and the Hitler Bell, Rabbi Walter Rothschild shrugs. He's more concerned about gains on the far right ahead of elections later this month.
There are more important things at the moment. There's the whole refugee crisis through the whole of Europe. There's a whole mess that's happening in the Middle East. There's the whole problems of the climate and starvation in Africa. I'm not going to get worked up about a bell in a church.
But the
Hey,
old
shout out to
relic
this
in
dude, man.
Herxheim has
Shout out to that dude, man. He said, I don't have time. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that bell and that whatever. I don't have time for that. I have time for real things. Shout out to that dude, man.
in fact been
He's a
silenced
real
in
one.
the end. The day after we visited, church elders took a decision they'd previously said was for the town council to make, and the bell will ring no more.
Oh man,
It
come
won't be
on.
enough to vanquish the demons.
Come
that-
really? I'm not gonna say anything. That's not my country. Yo, that bell has been sounding for a thousand years, man. Just scrape it. I don't know, do something like put a tape on it. Put tape. Man, that's so sad, bro. My God. Well, they decided to do it, man. So you have to respect that. You have to respect it. Let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear you guys' opinion on regarding this topic. Maybe you guys can help me out with this one. I'll see you in the next one.